Whenever you donate to a charity, you're actually taking part in a legal tradition that goes back thousands of years. We see the names of nonprofits everywhere, on universities, hospitals, you name it. But have you ever stopped to wonder where the whole idea of an organization that can outlive its founder even came from? Well, let's trace that incredible journey all the way from a radical idea in ancient Rome to the bustling streets of modern-day Mumbai.
So yeah, let's start with the big one. Where did this even come from? We kind of take nonprofits for granted today, right? But the concept of a legal thing that's dedicated to the public good, something that can own property and just exists forever, that had to be invented. It was not an obvious idea at all. And to find where it was invented, we have to travel way back in time. We're talking over 2,000 years ago, to the innovative, law-obsessed world of ancient Rome.
Okay, so first up, the ancient origins. The Romans were without a doubt legal geniuses, and one of their most brilliant and lasting ideas was creating the legal DNA for what we now call a nonprofit. It was an absolute game changer for how people could give back. Around 150 BC, Roman law came up with something truly wild: the idea that a philanthropic group could be an immutable, undying person. I mean, just think about that for a second. An undying person. For the very first time, a mission or a cause could legally outlive the human being who started it. It could own property, it could receive money, and it could carry on its work forever. This one single concept is the bedrock of every single charity and nonprofit that exists today. And this powerful idea didn't just sit there, it grew. Starting around 96 AD, a series of Roman leaders, the ones we call the Five Good Emperors, kept expanding who could receive these gifts. First, the Emperor Nerva said, "Okay, cities can accept bequests." Then Trajan took it a step further to towns. After him, Hadrian opened it up to villages. And finally, Marcus Aurelius basically blew the doors wide open, letting even private groups get in on the action. You can see philanthropy slowly shifting from something only the state could manage to something for the people. So that's the Roman foundation. But how did we get the specific tool we call a trust? For that, we need to fast forward several centuries to medieval England. The Roman idea of a permanent organization was still around, but a very specific problem with land ownership called for a brand new legal invention. So here was the headache. Under the super rigid rules of English common law back then, you couldn't just write a will and leave your land to someone. It was complicated, tied up in feudal rules and obligations. This was a huge problem for landowners who wanted to make sure their property went to the people or the causes they cared about after they were gone. And the solution they came up with? It was pure legal genius. Lawyers invented this concept called the use. Here's how it worked. A landowner would transfer their property to a trusted friend, not for them to keep, but to hold it for the use of the person they actually wanted to have it. It was this clever little workaround that neatly sidestepped the strict laws. And that simple idea, one person holding something for the benefit of another, is the direct ancestor of what we call a trust today. Okay, so we have this Roman idea of a permanent entity and this English invention of the trust. How did they make their way to India? Well, over a few hundred years, these concepts were adopted, they were adapted, and they were written into law, creating a really unique legal framework. You can really see the legal framework in India getting built, piece by piece, over more than a century. It started way back in the early 1800s with regulations in Bengal and Madras. Then came a huge step forward with the Societies Registration Act in 1860. The 20th century saw more laws get added, each one building on the last, all leading up to a really important moment right after independence. And that culmination was the Bombay Public Trusts Act of 1950. This was a landmark piece of legislation. What it did was sweep away all those older, scattered rules that existed in the state and create one single modern rulebook. This act really set the stage for how public trusts would be run for decades. Okay, so we've been throwing these words around a lot. Trust, charity, public benefit. Now that we've got the history down, let's take a second and nail down what these things actually mean, legally speaking. So, according to the Indian Trust Act, a trust isn't actually the money or the property itself. Get this, it's the obligation that's attached to the property. It's a legally binding duty that says the owner, the trustee, has to hold those assets for someone else's benefit. At its heart, it's a relationship built on confidence and a sense of duty. But for a trust to become a charitable trust, it has to pass one critical test. It's called the public benefit test. So what does that even mean? Well, look at this. A trust to pay for your own son's education. That's a private trust. the benefit is private. But a trust to establish a university that's open to the public, now that's a charity. The benefit is for the community, for the public at large, not just for one specific person. All right, let's bring this right up to the present day. Because the modern legal landscape in India has some really fascinating wrinkles, especially when we start talking about trusts for specific communities. And, you guessed it, taxes. So in India, it is 100% legal to create a public trust that's meant to benefit a specific religious community or a caste. A famous example is the Aga Khan Diamond Jubilee Trust case, where the Bombay High Court said yes. A trust for the upliftment of the Khoja community is a totally valid public charity. But here comes the twist, and this is a really important one for any nonprofit today. Even though that communal trust is perfectly legal, the tax code plays by its own rules. Any trust that was created for a specific religious community after April 1st, 1962, is not exempt from income tax. And this shows a really crucial difference. Being a valid charity and being a tax-exempt charity are two very different things. This all brings us to a really deep and important idea, which was captured perfectly in this court ruling. What we consider to be charity isn't some fixed definition that's written in stone. It's fluid. It's alive. It's shaped by the customs, the laws, and what the court calls the common opinion of the society it's in. What was charitable in ancient Rome might not be what we think is charitable today. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This whole journey, from an undying person in Rome to a tax code navigating organization in Mumbai, it shows constant evolution. So as our own communities keep changing, as our ideas about what public good even means evolve, you have to wonder, how is our definition of charity itself going to change right along with them?